2 years ago, I had a decision to make. Would I play it safe and get a computer science degree, or would I dive headfirst into my passion, game development? You can guess what I decided on. I'm going to describe my experience at game dev school, what projects I completed, some regrets I had, whether it was worth it for me, some tips, as well as why you should spend some more time weighing up your options if you're looking to enter the game development industry. I began attending my game programming course at the start of 2022 here in Australia. As part of my requirements to enter the course, I needed to go through an interview and showcase some game/programming related projects that I had previously completed. Luckily for me, I had experience in programming since around 2017, which included Python, JavaScript for web development, and C++ in Unreal Engine 4. Obviously, the lead up to the interview was quite nerve-wracking, especially considering I had no idea whether my projects were good enough. However, in the end, the interviewer seemed to be quite impressed by my previous experience, which was mainly just a small UE4 game I made with one other guy as part of my final assessment at college. To be honest, I reckon someone with zero knowledge could have made it past the interview. They seemed quite desperate, which isn't the greatest sign looking back. Anyways, I got accepted and began my classes in February of that year, and if I remember correctly, there were around 16 programming students at the start of the first year. Now, one thing I was not expecting was for all my classes to be hosted through Zoom. Yes, despite being on campus and sitting in the same room as the trainer, everything was done through Zoom calls. Now, this was mostly due to COVID restrictions and online students. However, it was still very disappointing and I believe heavily impacted the learning experience for lots of people. Not only was watching our learning material through a call very boring, but it made it a lot harder for us to discuss and show off cool things we were making. The majority of the first year felt very isolating. All disciplines, designers, artists and programmers were separated into different rooms. And for someone like me, and a lot of programmers alike, I pretty much did not talk to a single artist or designer until the end of the year, spending almost every lunch break sat in my car. Yes, I know, loser moment. Now, not everything was that depressing. It was still awesome being able to work on something I loved every day, and it did not feel like a hassle to do. Anyways, I think it's about time I show off all the game projects I worked on during my course, in chronological order. The first months were dedicated to learning C# and C++, as well as doing some research on workplaces, such as work health and safety. We began by doing some basic exercises on object-oriented programming, data structures, code debugging, and some game-related mathematics, such as vectors and matrices. The first game I made was a tank game, made using Raylib in C#, utilizing the custom maths classes we had to make. This pretty much taught us how to use matrices and create hierarchies for objects in the scene, storing world positions and rotations, and applying different transformations. I also did some physics interactions and very simple AI. The next game project was to recreate a retro video game in C++ and Raylib once again. We had a few choices, but I ended up picking Arkanoid, a game very similar to the original Breakout, which most people would know. It's basically what you would expect. You have a paddle and you have to bounce a ball until all bricks are broken. I ended up making a story mode in which you make your way through 10 levels of increasing difficulty, and you lose your progress on death. I also made a custom level editor where you could design your own levels, with different layouts, brick and background colors, and brick health. You can save these custom levels to a file and play them. I was very proud of this project at the time, and I still think it's pretty cool. Next, I did a project on video game AI and pathfinding. In this, I learnt about state machines, utility AI, and various pathfinding algorithms. To showcase this stuff, I made a top-down 2D Hitman knockoff. You are tasked with eliminating a target inside a house full of various NPCs. These NPCs wander around different sections of the map, depending on what profession they have. Janitors visit each bathroom, guards wander around populated areas, and civilians wander randomly. As the player, you can kill and disguise yourself in different clothing. NPCs will react to seeing a murder or to you holding a weapon by running away. They will also remember the disguise you were wearing when it happened, alerting all nearby NPCs. Finally, after 7 months of standalone C# and C++ programming, I finally got to make something inside the Unity game engine. This first project was to get used to the Unity UI systems. We had to research, design, and implement a UI system that could be used in a game. I decided to make a skill tree system. It pretty much works how you would expect. There are a bunch of nodes which progress downwards, and you can unlock new branches after purchasing one node. This is actually the base which I use for my skill tree in Chromatic Shift. As you can see, they are quite similar. The final solo project of the year was a cross-platform game made in Unity. The goal was to develop a game which could run on multiple platforms, Windows, Android, and web in my case. I decided to make a player vs AI based defense sort of game. You start on an island and you have to collect wood and various ores to upgrade your base. At the same time, there are various other islands with AI controlled bases, all of which will collect resources, upgrade their own bases, and create boats to try attack your base. The goal is to destroy all these bases before they destroy yours. Now, the big conclusion of my first year was a big group production. Artists, designers, and programmers were all randomly assigned to groups, and we were given a game brief which told us what type of game we were making and what the requirements were. My group ended up with a first-person shooter brief, with requirements such as 2 weapons, 2 enemies, player movement, etc., whatever you would expect from a first-person shooter. The idea we ended up coming up with was an FPS where you play as an ant, defending your colony from an invading colony of ants. The unique feature of the game was the ability for the player and enemies to move along any axes, meaning you could move across walls, the ceiling, or any other objects. I still think the idea was really cool and unique, and I'm kinda sad we didn't get to spend more time with it. Now on to year 2. For me, the second year of the course was where I started to get more comfortable and confident with everything. Our assessment projects were also bigger and more complicated, which made it truly feel like I was learning heaps, and it was really fun overcoming some of the challenges they presented. Now onto the projects. The first assessment consisted of 2 parts where we had to create and document a custom 2D physics simulation in C++. And then create a small Unity game demonstrating Unity's physics systems. The physics simulation was obviously the harder part of the assessment. We had to implement various kinematic and non-kinematic 2D collision shapes, collision detection and resolution, joints, and applying forces such as gravity. On the other hand, the Unity game I decided to make was a 3D tank game that showcased projectiles, collision responses, rigid bodies, ragdolls, raycasts, and joints. The goal of the game is to just drive around and shoot at enemies, collect power-ups, and use your airstrike, all to get as many points as possible. The second assessment also consisted of 2 parts, but this time based around computer graphics. We had to make an application in OpenGL and C++ that could render 3D models, calculate lighting, and have custom post-process effects with GL/SL shaders. We again also had to make another Unity game, which demonstrated various Unity systems such as shaders and materials, skeletal animations, and UI. I made a small game where you play as a robot painter, who must make sure all robots are painted the correct color according to their traits. You are shown a robot on a conveyor belt and must give it the right paint depending on its 3 animations. The final solo project of the year was a project where we had to research and implement a complex system of our choice into Unity. I chose to make a utility AI system which makes it easier for someone to program AI behaviors without needing to know the in-depth utility AI functionality. The hardest part of this project was actually integrating my system into the Unity interface, mainly the inspector. I had to make my custom system serializable, and I had to implement my own method serializing system that allows for multiple parameter inputs from the inspector. As the first group project of the year, we had to learn and create a VR Unity game prototype over a 4-week period. We had to choose from a few prototype ideas, and we ended up choosing a fishing game. Our idea was a fishing game where you play as a murderer trying to fish up body parts that you dumped in a pond, as police have begun investigating the area. You have to cover body part smells with various types of fish to make it past police dogs guarding the entrances to the pond. This project was actually quite difficult, as getting used to the VR workflow while trying to complete all features required was a bit of work. And finally, to finish off my 2 years, we had around 4 months to plan and develop a game of our choosing. For most people, this first began with pitching various game ideas that we would undergo. After a couple of weeks of pitching, a few pitches were selected to become the projects that would be completed, which ended up being 4. However, the group I was a part of did a project for a client instead, meaning our pitching process was done directly with our client and revolved around specific things they wanted. I'm not going to go too in depth with it, but we ended up developing a VR training simulation in Unity. And that's about it for the major projects I completed during my 2 years at game dev school. Now I just want to talk a bit about the good and the bad, and some tips if you're thinking about going down the same path as me. I want to start with whether the whole experience was worth it for me, and getting straight to the point, I'm going to say yes, but just barely. I began the course expecting to exit straight into an industry job, however I didn't really take into account the many other factors which impact getting a job. Firstly, and not really the fault of anyone, is that the video game industry is not in a good spot at the moment. There's thousands of layoffs and finding entry/junior level positions is very rare. This should improve over the years and hopefully won't impact future graduates as much. Secondly, the qualifications I received just weren't high enough. I received an advanced diploma, which here in Australia is one level below a bachelor's degree. Now, I'm not saying that you need higher qualifications to get a job in the industry. However, the industry is saturated with computer science graduates, and when you're competing against them, it's a bit harder. Thirdly, I live in a place with quite a small game development community, which obviously means there are less opportunities. This is one of the big ones that you should absolutely keep in mind when looking to follow this path. Take a bit of time to research the game companies and communities in your area, and also take a look at where the industry is biggest in your country. If you're like me and live in Australia, there's something called the Australian Game Development Survey, which happens every year, and it gives an idea of where most game development occurs in the country. If it weren't for me going to game dev school, I would have never begun working on Chromatic Shift, Grog, or this YouTube channel, and I certainly wouldn't have made the friends and connections I have. All of this aside, if you're truly motivated to go to game dev school, absolutely go ahead. However, make sure you research some of these things before making your decision, and be ready to go above and beyond what you're learning in class. As in my opinion, to enter the industry you will need to spend a lot of time doing projects in your own time. Finally, I want to take all that I've said, mistakes I made, things that I think helped me, plus some extras, and create a list of stats which I believe will maximize your experience if you are looking to continue your education into game development. So decide whether you truly want to pursue. Before you make your decision to join a game development school, research the industry in your area and maybe find some previous people's experiences on places like Reddit. So once you've decided that you want to enter, you got to prepare. To make the interview as easy as possible for yourself, create a small project that showcases your art, design, or programming skills in a game-related way. For example, programmers try and make a small game in a game engine such as Unreal, Unity, or Godot, or anything else really. For artists, a 3D character or environment may be good. For designers, try create a level in a game engine. You can even use free packages to do all the programming stuff for you if you just want to focus on the level design stuff. It all really just depends on what area of expertise you want to focus on. Second, create a portfolio website. You may not have any projects or skills yet, but I still recommend making a website before you start your course that will allow you to easily add new projects and skills as you go. It will save a lot of hassle when nearing the end of your course, when you need to create a website and write up all the things you did over the duration of your course. It's just not fun. Trust me, that's what I did. Number 3, create social media pages. This one is a little bit less important, but it's good to just get some social media pages up, especially ones like LinkedIn, which is still a big platform for connecting and finding job opportunities. Doing things in your own time. Have some sort of project or multiple projects related to your game development skills. For example, make your own games, contribute to other people's projects, make assets, etc. 2. Constantly update your portfolio and social media. If you follow this list, you will have created a portfolio/social media presence. If you can, then post what you've made at school or during your own time, and maybe write a little bit of information about what you've done. It is much easier showing off work as you do it, and also shows that you're progressing with your skills. And finally, do not do the bare minimum in your projects. This one's kind of obvious. Go above and beyond on your projects. Whether it's solo or a group project, put in at least a little bit more effort into expanding upon given requirements. This not only makes your peers remember your skills, but it also makes your projects look even more impressive on your portfolios. And that's about it. Obviously, take what I said with a grain of salt, as I am by no means an expert, but I just wanted to share my experiences with game development schooling. Overall, I believe it was a good experience for me. However, it is certainly risky and only for those who are truly motivated. If you are looking to go down the same path as me, hell yeah! I wish you the best of luck. Make some cool stuff. That's all. See ya in the next video.